my name is Beck and welcome to my spoiler-free review of Proven Guilty. This is book 8 in the Dresden Files series. I will leave below my list of Dresden reviews in my playlist, so go and check that out. Otherwise, this book will spoil you. The first line is a major spoiler, so you've been warned. Don't go into this review if you haven't read up to this point in this series so far. So now that we've got those warnings out of the way, in this book, Dresden is a newly appointed warden of the White Council, and he is responsible for the town of Chicago. Technically, he was responsible for that before, just because he'd stepped up to that responsibility, but now in an official capacity, he's responsible for the city of Chicago, and he's got to investigate black magic in this book. And also the vampire war is still going on, and that has thinned out the numbers of the council. And in addition to that, there is a recurring character that we've seen in the past come back in this book, and Dresden gets a call from her and she needs bailing out of jail. So those are the few moving parts that set up this book. So there is a lot going on here, and it's happening in the best way. I honestly loved how a lot of the parts of Dresden's life coalesced, and that's usually something that I enjoy across the rest of the books as well, if it's done right, and it was done very well here. And I like how Dresden's friends became his allies and they backed him up in certain situations as well. I love the way that everything combined. It just did it so tastefully and in a way that piqued my interest continually. And something that also piqued my interest about these characters in this story so far, it's happened a couple of times in various ways in this series, and it involves the villains of the story. So the way that Jim Butcher writes them, he doesn't write them as like cardboard cutout enemy 1 and enemy 2. He writes it in a way that, as well as Dresden developing, so do these characters around him. Their personalities stay quite fixed, so their reactions to things are very in line with how you would expect them to be, but the way that Dresden's perspective about certain characters gets altered depending on the narrative. And I'm being very loose about this description and very careful because obviously it is a loaded statement about spoilers, so I'm not going to go into who and why, but I like the way that certain angles of the story shift, and so you see different characters in a newer way, and that made the story so much richer to me because it showed growth of perspective and of character and of narrative as well, and it opened new directions for potential interactions later down the track, and I quite liked that part of the story. And just to continue on characters, I couldn't talk about this book without talking about Murphy, one of my favourite side characters. Obviously I can't say what specific scenes I liked about her, but I liked the way that she was communicative and vulnerable with Dresden in this book, and if you know, you know, but I just found this conversation quite rad. I really like her as a character. I like her dynamic with Dresden, and I like that they don't skirt around the edges. They communicate with each other, and that's something that I really appreciate. At the beginning of the series, in the first few books, I got frustrated when Dresden would, go gung-ho on a case and then not inform Murphy of what he was doing, but he's really starting to open up to her and trust her a lot more, and that is starting to be reflected in her actions as well. They both are starting to trust each other quite deeply, and I quite like that dynamic between them, and I hope it's something that really continues on in the series because those are the two key characters that I like probably the most so far. But again, unfortunately, this book went into sexualizing one of the characters in here. It's not Murphy, it's somebody else, but it's just a theme that I keep seeing recur, and it's something that I would very happily see less of, and I just wanted to spotlight it because it's something that I wanted to mention and not gloss over, but it didn't impact my overall rating. It was just something I noticed, and it was done in a very heavy-handed way this time, and while Dresden rejected it in general, the fact that it existed in the plot was something that made me uncomfortable, and it made him a little bit uncomfortable as well, but it was just deeply observed when it didn't need to be. So that is my vague kind of, I would like to push that away from this series, feelings about sexualization of female characters in this book. It wasn't, I just wish it wasn't done to the heavy-handed depth that it was done in here. It was unnecessary. That's all I have to say. So breezing right past that, I'm going to talk about my overall feelings and the theme of this book, because Butcher does this thing where he pivots on a main theme in each of his books in a multifaceted way. And I want to say so much about the ending, but I can't because spoilers, but I loved the way that this pivoted on good intentions. And that is what Dresden is examining in his psyche, and he's wondering if he's a good person, considering the things he's had to do so far. And I love that character exploration. And I also love how some of the secondary characters were exploring this theme as well. I love how it rippled through the book. And just because someone has good intentions doesn't mean there's necessarily going to be a positive outcome. So I love that that was shown in this, and I love that it was explored in a nuanced way. I also really like the unfolding of politics and the different vantage points that had, like from the White Council, from Dresden's allies and friends, from the vampire courts, from the Fae. It just all coalesced in here, and I've said that a few times, but I mean it and I loved it. So I've seen so far that there are lots of different story arcs coming to a head, and I think I'm still in Act 1 of the Dresden Files, and I don't want to definitively know when that ends, but I think it's starting to come to a close here, because this seemed to set up a lot of potential character avenues, a lot of potential lore of the world, and a lot of potential moving forward points with Dresden and his magic and the few side characters that we see in here. So I don't want to say too much, obviously, but I think this was quite a pivotal book in terms of the world building and the expansion that we are going to potentially see moving forward into the series. And that is one of the reasons that I loved this book, because it didn't feel overcrowded and it felt quite balanced. Unlike a previous book, I think it was Death Masks, where I found everything quite busy. This one felt busy, but it didn't feel overwhelmingly so. And I like that it really felt grounded in what it was trying to convey. I can just see this series growing with each book, and it's doing so well, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars if you couldn't already tell. This is one of my new favorites in this series for sure. I can't wait to see the seeds that have been planted in this grow in the future installments. I have so many predictions. I can't wait to discuss spoilers for this series, because I have things that I need to discuss without having to skirt around them like I've been doing in these reviews. But I have a lot of fun doing these reviews because I love talking about Dresden and these characters in this world. So 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book. If you want to talk about it with me in the comments, please do. But if you're going to say spoilers about this book so far, put spoilers in your comments so nobody else reading them gets spoiled. And please don't hint at what's going to happen later, because I like discovering this series, and the less hints the better. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll talk to you down in the comments, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye.